So now we're going to begin with our academic agenda, and for this I'm going to invite to the podium Juan Antonio Hinojosa. Juan Antonio Hinojosa is going to speak about the supply and demand situation of corn. He's a sole technician of the Superior Center of the Centro Superior Stores in Monterrey, Mexico. He began working with Agroacemex, the federal company that is responsible for agricultural insurance in Mexico. He worked there for 4 months, and he was responsible for agricultural insurance beginning in the 1990s. In 1995, he was invited by the Bank of Rural Credit in Mexico to participate as an advisor to the general management. 1996, he was promoted as sub-manager in the unit of planning and budgeting of that same bank, and he performed in that position until 1999. Then he was invited to work as a broker for StoneX in Kansas City, in the United States, and he was working with companies in Mexico, Central America, and Colombia, and he worked with different derivative instruments for handling risk, especially in the markets of corn, wheat, and for different livestock species. In 1993, he was invited by the Mexican market to work in the Board of Agriculture to create the basis of the agriculture per contract in that contract, and after that he became a senior advisor for rig administration in the Latin American office of StoneX in Kansas City. After 2020, StoneX expanded operations and reinforced its operations, and Juan Antonio was relocated to Miami, where he continues working as vice president and senior consultant with regards to risk administration. He develops and creates risk administration programs for producers, buyers, and final consumers. He's a very familiar face to many of us, and with this, Juan, you're welcome, and please come up to the podium.
Gracias. 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 Buenas tardes. Gracias. Un honor estar aquí.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's quite an honor to be with you, and I'm responsible for the first presentation, basically to let you know what's happening in the market today. We make decisions based on prior decisions. At least that's what we used to do. Not the case anymore. So without any further preamble, I'm going to jump into my presentation. Okay, basically what this says is that I'm not responsible for anything that I say. Okay, what's new? What's new? Well, 2023 opened its doors with the following prices reached the highest historical prices in 2022, and this is information from the FAO. So again, the food reached its highest prices in history last year, and according to this chart, these indexes that we have in front of us, 143.7 points, 14.3 above 2021, and actually this is, as I said before, the highest level, the highest price ever reached. So again, in 2022, 4 out of the 5 food sub-indexes, meaning cereal, meats, dairy products, and oils, vegetable oils, again reached the highest historical prices. Sugar is the 5th one, and sugar reached its highest price in the last 10 years. So this was our happy new year this year. So what's new? Basically, the most recent information with regards to supply and demand that comes from the Agricultural Department of the United States indicates the following. It indicates that globally for the 22-23 cycle, it's 1,155 million tons of corn versus 1,214 million. Most importantly, final stock, 296 million tons versus 306 million tons. Again, less production, less stock, and this is globally. If we were to look into as to who is producing, well, the first producer is the United States. 30% of the global production comes from the United States. Corn production, that is, whatever happens in the United States is going to affect us directly. I mean, we speak about Brazil frequently, about Argentina frequently, but if we look at the production of these two countries produce 50% of what the United States produces. But one very interesting point is not only production, but exports. Who is offering grains in the market and who is impacting the prices. And if we check who is in the market, still the United States is the first exporter of corn in the world with 27%. However, if we look at Brazil under this table, Brazil and Argentina, again, their weight is more significant. It is important to see how Brazil is only 1 percentage point below the United States for this new 2022-2023 cycle. And again, I think that's quite interesting. I think that's quite important. And I think this is going to have an impact on prices when the newest or the most recent harvest in Brazil hits the market. If we look at the supply and demand table, again, we see additional surprises. The first surprise is that the surface that is being cropped, again, here we can see all the months, and they have changed this, and basically 79.2 million acres versus 88.6. So basically what this indicates is that the surface that is being planted in the United States with regards to corn is less, but there's also more yield, 1 extra bushel per acre. But this is less than 300. This is 348 million tons of corn versus 353, which was calculated, versus 382, which was the results of the last cycle. With regards to fodder usage, 134 million versus 5.3 billions. Basically, this indicates that there's less consumption. Why do you think there's less consumption? Less livestock consumption. Why would someone stop consuming corn for livestock use as well? Basically, the answer is price. Yes, price. Exports, right here, another important point. Exports also were reduced from 52.7 or 6.75 to 1,000. Again, someone is taking this market from the United States, and that someone is is Brazil. We're going to speak a lot about Brazil during my presentation today. Final inventories. 1,242 versus 1,547. Again, less inventories in terms of corn. It's also a surprise. Everybody was thinking that we were going to have additional stock, but that is not the case. The market, as we know, does not like surprises. Markets do not like surprises, and these were definitely surprises for all of us. What it's not changing, and this is a very nice pointer. So again, payment to producers is really not changing. There's a figure doesn't really change with regards to payment to producers, and regardless, there are changes in the supply and demand table. Yes, many changes. Another report that was published in January refers to the stock or the inventories on December 1st, and there are two major differences between these two reports, but I just mentioned inventories, right? Well, this report, we're looking at estimates. These are projections as to how the cycle was expected to close. What we have in this table now is the reality, how much real grain we had in our inventories on December 1st. And yes, another big surprise here. We have that as of December 1st, 2022, the inventories were 10.81 billion bushels. Corn inventories, and the expectation of the market was 11.15, and this is way below December 1st, 2021. So we underestimated demand. Again, two sectors, maybe the livestock sector, but I think the ethanol industry also had a big impact here. So, in other words, there's less grains than what the market expected. If we look at the supply of corn throughout the United States, we would see that the bases are the most expensive bases in the last 20 years. So we saw that the market was stable but the bases were different, and what's happening is that we have less grain, and the bases indicate that reality with regards to supply and demand. And again, this makes the situation a little bit clearer. What happened is that we consume more, so we have less grains available. With regards to demand, I'm going to focus on two things: livestock use and uses for ethanol production. This table that we have here is a comparison of corn prices versus wheat, basically, in important livestock areas in the United States. And again, this is surprising to many of us, and we can see here that wheat is actually less expensive than corn. I'm not speaking about any type of wheat. I'm speaking about soft wheat. I'm speaking about hard wheat that can be turned into bread, winter wheat that is. And again, it's cheaper, not as expensive. Southeast Kansas, again, the panhandle of Texas, in the North Carolinas, in Colorado as well. So, excuse me, not in Colorado, but this has to indicate something. And again, all these things add to the supply and demand situation for this first semester. Everybody focuses on Brazil exports and taking share with regards to the U.S. exports, but what's happening is that this is also more expensive. Again, corn is more expensive than wheat. With regards to corn consumption for ethanol, 1/3 of everything that is produced in the United States is used for ethanol purposes. Political issue, whatever it is, this is what is being used for. And we have that last week 943,000 daily barrels of ethanol production, inventories of 23 million. However, if we look at the general balance between production, between supply and demand, we would need to be producing more than 1 million barrels per day, and we're not doing that. We have similar levels to what we had at the end of 2021, okay? So yes, is the ethanol industry going to remain? Yes. If the oil barrels remain at $80, $90, ethanol is going to remain present. Margins perhaps are not going to be as good, but they're going to remain and they're going to continue consuming, and this is going to impact our basis with regards to operations in the U.S. Sales, exports. This dotted yellow line is what we exported last year. The brown dotted line is what the USDA projects to export this year, and the blue bars is what was really exported. And as you can see, since the commercial cycle began, we have not been able to reach the USDA projections, not even 47% of what was projected. Now, who are the main buyers here? Basically Mexico. Yes, I love Mexico. I'm from Mexico. Mexico remains as the first buyer of U.S. corn. NGOs and so on. Well, basically, Mexico consumes and exports 67 million tons this year. China is the second one. Big difference between these two countries. If we look into the specific details, as of January 5th, we can see that Mexico had bought 10.9 million tons versus 12.3 of last year. But Mexico is exporting from other countries as well, from Brazil, from South Africa as well. And why? Because corn is expensive. Corn has gotten more expensive, but something that is very important, China 3.9 million tons versus 12.4, which they bought last year, which they exported last year. In Latin America as well, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, Colombia, again, very similar figures. El Salvador, very similar figures, and they're all there. And in these two countries, a tremendous potential of U.S. exports are taken. Okay, this is the zone that produces corn in the United States. Perhaps you have heard that there have been droughts in the U.S. or that it is raining a lot in the U.S., but where? There are four main states: Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, and Minnesota. They produce close to 60% of what's produced in the United States. Only four states. Illinois produces 27 million tons, while Illinois produces double, close to 50 million tons. So whatever happens in these states is going to impact us. And what is the situation in those states? This is the map. This is the precipitation forecast for January. Right now, it's not raining in the corn belt, and yes, corn has been harvested, but this area is having more precipitations than what was expected. And if we look at January, February, and March, the forecast for those 3 months, we continue seeing very good projections for the east part of the United States. And this is quite important because this is the area where we capture all the movement of the Mississippi River with regards to corn exports. And last year we had many problems with the Mississippi River due to the drought. With this year's snow, the flow of grain is going to be more important in that area, and of course this is going to have an impact. And why? Because when we heard about this Ukraine situation, everybody relied on the Americas for their grains, and the United States was having logistical problems, railway problems, and problems with the Mississippi River, and this is important. And this basically indicates that there's going to be more grain available next year to sell and to export to whoever wants it.
There's a very important shift, and it's according to the climate. We have lived for a long time the effect of La Niña. The analysis that we received on climate change have shown us an effect of Niña towards Niño in 2023. It's possible that the La Niña is going to weaken for the following months. This is going to favor us. Or let's say a south in oxidation El Niño in the first trimester of 2023. So many people think that this can promote not only at the end of March, but maybe at the end of February. And what would that affect me? Several things. First of all, it can favor in rainfall, in corn, soybean, in Argentina, for example. For me, this rainfall is going to help, but they're going to arrive late. But they will gonna benefit the center part of the United States for sorghum, for example. On the meantime, when we end the La Niña, definitely it's going to have an impact on price, because these are not past markets. These are markets towards the future. What I do think I know is going to impact in prices furthermore, or in the future. Who else produces? Who is present? We have Brazil, Argentina, Ukraine, China. How are they? First of all, Brazil. Let's talk about Brazil. The increase in production of Brazil is very important. 125 million tons for this cycle 22-23, when last year was 116, only 187 past year. This is incredible. The production of Brazil is very strong. Exports, 47 million tons versus 45 million last year, with 27 the previous year. So Brazil is a very important player, very strong one. Let's talk about Argentina. 52 million tons against 55 on the previous months, 49 on the previous year. There's a slight reduction, 3 million. These are official numbers. We're going to see what the local numbers say. This is official. Exports, 38 million against 35.5 million on the previous year. According to this, South America is going to be very active. It's producing, it's going to be present in the market. What happens with Ukraine? It has 27 million tons of production, produces more than Mexico, and it's a country in war, unfortunately. Ukraine against 42.1 in the previous year. Exports 20.5 million against 27 of past year. It's going to be active. It's going to be exporting. China, second producer of corn in the world, 277 million, increased their production compared to the previous month, and 5 more millions than the previous year. But most importantly, it's their imports. And for this 22-23 cycle, the imports of corn is going to be 18 million tons, when last year were around 21.9 million. And the previous year were in 29.5 million. All of us who focus on the fact that China was going to import the quantity of grain without having to know when, it's the price. China is not importing corn. It has an internal project of growing in 2030, whatever. These are centralized decisions. I don't know. But officially, they're saying they're going to import every year less and less. Mexico, 17 million tons for this year against a lower compared to last year, and the European Union. Something interesting about the European Union, as you know, they had a very bad year. It had a huge drought in that part of the world. The production of corn, 54.2 against 71 compared to last year. But the most important thing is not the low of production, but their imports are stable. 21.5 against 19. So it's not responding to low production. What's happening in Europe then? Substitution? Replacement? With what? But definitely corn, they're going to try to keep it very stable. Very well. I'm going to focus in Argentina, Brazil, and Ukraine. What happens with Argentina? This is the area of production in Argentina. This is an image taking last week. Rainfall. But sporadic rainfall. They are in the process of pollination today. And the prognosis for January, February, and March is dry. Last week, Argentina had planted 83% already. Below, okay, but they were planted. The problem is not the quantity or advancement of that planting. It's the quality that they have of what is being planted. And last week, Argentina had only 7% from good to excellent. Only that. Pay attention to this. Argentina is a very important contender in the market, when last year we had 23. So Argentina, in the final quarter of 2022, was the driest in the past years, around 44% below of the normal and 34% even drier compared to the same period of last year. The drought would lower the yields, but not only that, also reduce the surface planted. 600,000 less hectares, and the stock of El Rosario cut off drastically. It's not 3 million less, it's 10 million tons less in Argentina. That's what the locals say. Unfortunately, for February and March, according to the different models, climate models show a low rainfall for the following months. So we must not forget that Argentina is the first exporter of oil and soy meal at international level, okay? And the third exporter of corn globally. So this contender with these problems for the rest of these 2023 is going to produce, it's going to export. But I do think that the quality of the product that it's offering is not as good. The other one, how about Brazil? Brazil is huge. We have two cycles. The first cycle, it's okay, very well. The production is on 20 million, very well. But exportable is the second cycle. The harvest. How is Brazil? The incentive to be able to produce is that there's not enough grain internationally. The first cycle is in February and March. I'm interested in the exportable. That's going to be in July. So if Argentina is not doing well, and the exportable offer, important offer in Brazil, is from the second semester on and ends at the end of January or February. Ladies and gentlemen, the first semester of 2023, there's nobody else offering quality grain apart from the United States. And this will impact really the basis. That's it. So at the end of last year, they updated the list of the exporters in Brazil. They want all the corn from Brazil. We're talking about China, not the United States. But the United States is present all year long, not Brazil. So rainfall in South America, we still have problems in Argentina. Okay, Ukraine. What happens with Ukraine? Well, what happened last year? Ukraine had exported 23.6 million tons, 30% less. This is the final cycle. The problem is the cost to mobilize them are being discounted in the terminal point. Yes, there are much more costs due to the insurance because they're not insuring vessels. But the most important thing, pay attention to this. 17th of November, were harvested only 50% of the crop of Ukraine. Around 50% of what Ukraine produced has not been harvested. Can you imagine what the quality is going to be? Not only that, they do not have anywhere to store that to be able to work with the corn. It's reducing the offer of exports of quality grain. China. This is the price of the stock in Italian stock in China, of China. The internal price, $11 per bushel. That gives you an idea that China is going to be in the market buying grain. They have not bought from the United States, but if they do need that grain, they will have to buy from the United States. And obviously, even though the policy of zero tolerance changes, those who continue to demand commodities will have to pay attention to these funds. These companies that want to buy cheap and want to sell very expensive, that's easy. The funds, when the final quarter of each year are in negative, they're sold because there's offer of grain in the market. There's a huge production from the United States, but on 21 are long, they had not been reduced. The problem and the nervousness of many investors due to economic problems, inflation, among other things, well, there has been an increase, yes, but we're very long in the market, and that supports the prices. This graph is seasonality of the corn. One of the main problems that we all really have is that when we trend that's not well defined, we think that that's never going to change. This is a cycle. Every year changes supply and demand. So when we see the lower levels of price, when there's the crop in the main producer of corn in the world, some correction in this year due to that nervousness, economic nervousness, uncertainties, but it starts. So we see the offer and the price starts going up. There's nobody else offering. Up to when? Let's say July, June and July. What happens in July then? When you have an intention of very good crop, in July we have the pollination, the silking of the corn. And if you have a good surface and a very good climate for that silking process, the possibility of having a very good harvest is very high. And it's going to have a direct impact on the price. This year is not going to be an exception. I do think that the levels of price that we're seeing today that are among 30% higher in the past 5 years is a very important driver to really plant. I was talking with some producers in the Texas border, in the Mexican border, that the seed companies have had very important sales in seeds, but they haven't asked for credits because it's very expensive. But with the levels of price, they do have the money to self-finance themselves. So at the beginning, they begin to speculate how much is going to be planted in the United States. Maybe the producers can say I'm crazy or not, but what starts to be thought of is it's going to the surface, planted surface is going to increase 2 million acres more. So increase of the surface, planting surface with less exports, because Brazil is not going to be very active only until July, increase on the final stock. The possibilities that we see a decline in price in the first, third quarter of this is going to be very high in this year. So, well, to wrap up today, the reduction of production of corn is being seen in the final report, even though the exports are reduced too. The inventories are being reduced in 124, the second lower ones compared to the past 9 years. The stocks on the 1st of December were lower to those forecasted, supporting to the fact that the current bases inside the United States are the highest in the past 20 years. This mix is very exclusive. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. The problem is to really go through the first semester. There's nobody else, only the United States with quality grain for everything you need. But internally, there's a huge demand of grain. We have the possibility to see how are the bases in each origin point, in each producers, cooperatives, traders, and the bases are there. So this is a chapter that we could talk and so on. But the basis really gives me an idea of the reality of the market.
Okay.
In Argentina, they reduced 3 million tons in production, but locals say no. They say it's 10 million more. With a quality of 7% on excellent, what they can be producing, they're not going with the quality that you would expect. The prices, FOB Brazil, are more competitive from the meantime, 8% cheaper than the United States. China is taking advantage of all this. Nevertheless, this will end very quickly. With a crop in Argentina that's been threatened, our perspectives of demand of U.S. grain will improve before the great harvest in Brazil really joins the game. That's going to be at the end of June. The China production is going to increase, but also the consumption. The prices very near to the $11 per bush, creating an expectation that we're going to continue to buy in the market, and they're going to buy from the United States. So there's uncertainty in the humanitarian corridor In Russia, Ukraine, yes. I wouldn't count that in my forecast. Well, but they're exporting, yes. But honestly, I don't think they have the quality. And finally, we could see a low seasonability in the prices in the future. Nevertheless, the trend doesn't is low. Is like a bear market. For the first semester, I do think that we're going to see volatility with high basis and demand for product coming from the United States that up till now is not balanced with the agricultural department, but I do think they will catch up very, very soon. Okay, 30 minutes. I did it. Thank you very much.
Gracias. Preguntas, venga.
Juan, gracias.
Thank you very much, Juan. The speakers, they have here all here they say in red, you have 10 minutes, 5 minutes to go. This is the moment we can ask some questions. You can ask the speaker some questions. Please, if anybody has a question, just raise your hand and one of the staff members will give you the microphone. You have a question over here? Perfect, thank you. Raise your hand, please, if you want to ask a question, because we have to make sure that the interpreters can listen to your questions to be able to translate the question and the answer for those who are connected and those who you are present today. Albert is going to monitor also the questions for those who are connected in the virtual session. So please use the question and answers button and you will have also the opportunity to ask a question. Thank you very much. Very interesting your information. We have to really understand that information. That final report left us with impact. So those who are going to buy in the future basis for the third trimester, fourth trimester, do we have to wait? How long approximately? How is the accelerated nowadays with that overview? The problem that we have with this market is the following. One of the actions that we see is buy for the rest of the year and relax. But that is very harmful. That's dangerous because what I just mentioned in the shift from one cycle to another, from July to September, normally in the Chicago stock in the future, the difference of the future are inventory charges. When we have exceeding stock, but when there's not enough in the market and the market wants it today, not afterwards, they discount the price. So there's an inverse. The longer is the cheaper. The problem is this one for the owner of the grain that I'm going to buy. When I go to the following months to keep on with my operation, that negative difference, I have to absorb it. I have to take that negative number that it's more expensive and more expensive. Reviewing the offer basis of grains in some cooperatives, not all of them, but some of them who are working with offers for the new crops, the different in July and September in internal basis, you're talking about $20, $30 per ton cheaper in September. If you buy everything in July, it's going to be expensive. So what do I have to do as a buyer to have an inverse market? Help me here. What do I have to do? I need to buy immediate needs. It's difficult, yes, because there's no grain at all. The bases are very, very expensive. You have the pressure of your boss, and they say you're out of the budget. That's not the budget. We have to really. We cannot stay. The plant cannot be stopped. I hope that never happens to you. So, to keep on by your needs, but I would give the benefit of the new harvest that can come from the United States. The first semester, we can talk everything. The second semester, let's analyze it furthermore, okay? Yes, we have another question. Okay, Carlos, you have a question? Thank you very much. When we talk about oil prices for this year, it's like a joker compared to the forecast you mentioned. You didn't talk about it very much. Could this will end in something to really take care of, into account? Yes, yes. I only had 30 minutes, but I'll keep on answering. Yes, it's going to have a very important aspect. One-third of the production that has a United States it's going to be produce alcohol, for example. It has a substantial price. If it lowers 60 or 70 dollars, the barrel is going to impact. So we have to really be on top of that. One more question. I have good news for the questions that we were not able to answer. So he's going to be in tonight, so you can ask him the questions. Final question, Alejandro. 2 questions, okay. Hi, I'm in doubt. You didn't show the forecast of Brazil. It's the main exporter today. What happens? One of the main exporters today. What happens with the political situation of in Latin America, and the situation that is today, the rates in Brazil? Can that affect everything? Yes, of course, it's going to affect. I'm not sure if we're going to have a difficulty tomorrow, but there are rates, but there are 4 points that are going to affect offer, demand, climate, and politics. Because maybe we're going to have a coup d'etat tomorrow, yes, if they take the Congress or not, but we have to carry on. Business as usual. They're working, exporting, importing. So there's a strike. So they exported everything already. So they still have half a year to solve the political problems. So today, if Brazil cannot export at the meantime, it's not a problem for me. We have to really pay attention if in June there's no solution. If that happens, there's a strike or something like that, yes, things can get more complicated. But this is a factor that we really have to take in consideration, yes. You mentioned that the Brazilian corn is 8% lower than the United States, but the difference on the availability of the starch is different. We have a blend versus a dented corn. For the price sack, no. Okay, nutritionists, where are you? But definitely it's not going to affect. Mexico, for example, has been very insistent because they say my grain has got protein, the amount of starch and everything. You can say everything to me. It's quoted on as a forage, as 1, 2, or as one consumption, human consumption. The classification points is not the amount of protein, starch. No, it's different for the classification and standardization of the price as such. But once in the market, when you need the analysis that you should need, could have an overprice. But for the price sack on basis, no. Thank you very much, Juan. Hand of applause for Juan. Thank you very much.